Part 18 begins with the awareness that some moments, though fleeting in real time, extend far beyond the hearing room, echoing in public discourse, institutional memory, and the conscience of a nation. The confrontation between Jasmine Crockett and Pam Bondi has become more than a question-and-answer exchange. It has become a case study in the mechanics of accountability under moral and historical pressure. The ever-present shadow of Jeffrey Epstein magnifies the stakes. It represents the failures of institutions to protect vulnerable people, the erosion of trust, and the weight of unresolved societal outrage. Crockett's insistence on explicit acknowledgement of survivors was not merely performative. It demanded that the institution validate the lived reality of harm in real time. Bondi's calm, structured defense reaffirmed the principle that historical context, legal frameworks, and procedural integrity are essential to sustaining credibility. The interplay between these two imperatives created a tension that was both gripping in the moment and instructive for the long-term functioning of democratic oversight. Looking closely, Crockett's approach conveys urgency and moral visibility. She pressed for recognition not as a rhetorical flourish, but as an ethical imperative, emphasizing that the presence of survivors should be acknowledged in the public record and treated as central, not peripheral. Bondi's responses, grounded in procedural justification, demonstrate that authority requires adherence to law, precedent, and context, even under the glare of moral expectation. Observers must navigate these dual messages, assessing both the sincerity of acknowledgement and the sufficiency of procedural explanation. The complexity of public evaluation illustrates a critical truth. Accountability is multidimensional and cannot be reduced to sound bites or partisan framing. The symbolic weight of the Epstein case amplifies the emotional stakes of the exchange. While the discussion is framed around past prosecutorial decisions, the underlying narrative reflects systemic failures, societal inequities, and the consequences of unacknowledged harm. Crockett's insistence brings the human element to the forefront, forcing both officials and the public to confront the moral cost embedded in institutional history. Bondi's composure provides a stabilizing counterbalance, ensuring that historical actions are interpreted through the lens of authority and procedural correctness. Together, these perspectives illustrate the delicate balance between human empathy and structural rigor, demonstrating how oversight can be both emotionally responsive and legally coherent. The iterative nature of accountability emerges as a central theme. Individual hearings rarely transform policy instantly, but they establish cultural expectations, signal norms, and influence future institutional behavior. Crockett's insistence may set a precedent for the visibility of acknowledgement in future oversight, while Bondi's disciplined framing models how historical decisions can be defended responsibly. Over time, the interaction reinforces the integration of empathy and procedural clarity as complementary, not conflicting, imperatives. This iterative evolution strengthens institutions, enhancing both legitimacy and public trust. Democratic tension is highlighted as a productive force rather than a flaw. Crockett's moral urgency injects clarity and insistence, while Bondi's measured responses preserve legitimacy and authority. Citizens observing the exchange learn that oversight requires both confrontation and explanation, urgency and composure, moral attention and procedural diligence. The interaction becomes a template for understanding how institutions navigate morally complex situations while maintaining structural integrity. Public scrutiny does not weaken institutions, it refines them, forcing alignment between expectation and performance. Ultimately, responsibility extends beyond the officials at the dais. The public's engagement, critical analysis, and reflection are what transform moments like this into enduring influence. The Crockett-Bondi exchange under the shadow of Epstein becomes a benchmark for how survivors are acknowledged, how authority is defended, and how institutions communicate with moral and procedural clarity. Its lasting impact relies on citizens' insistence that acknowledgement and structure remain inseparable, that empathy enhances authority rather than diminishes it, and that oversight is upheld with courage, rigor, and humanity. The essential insight is that justice is holistic. It is not only legal, procedural, or symbolic, it is the integration of acknowledgement, empathy, and authority that produces meaningful accountability. The conversation begun in that hearing continues to shape expectations, behavior, and institutional standards, serving as a reminder that transparent, humane, and structured governance is not optional but foundational. Moments like this define the way democracy functions under scrutiny, ensuring that ethical recognition and procedural rigor advance hand in hand, leaving a legacy that persists well beyond the immediate controversy.